facts are that in 2011, this council decided to enter into an agreement with Christchurch to join as many of the services as possible together. Further decisions were made to partner other councils in other areas. These decisions were made to lower the cost of these councils as grants from central government were being reduced on an annual basis. During the period 2011 to 2016, savings have been made to the tune of 12.38 million. This council's savings have been 6.6 million, more than 50% of those savings. These savings have enabled the council to maintain services, something we should be very proud of. Hard decisions should cause debate, but decisions must be made on the facts before us. And the fact is that we face considerable reductions in the support that we receive by the regional support grant, which is down from 1.8 million in 2013 to 263,000 this year. The proposal in front of us will give us savings of 380,000 over the next 5 years. Savings will be at the rate of £118,000 per year. Is that the sole basis for the decision? No. The current use of this building has been reduced to now less than 25%, with the cost of running the building showing little or no reduction in costs. It's always part of the long-term plan produced in 2011 to have one main office serving the joint partnership. After much discussion and looking at many alternatives, the Civic Centre in Christchurch was chosen. The Allen View House in Wimborne is an ideal location for access for members of the public with good public transport and excellent parking available. The accommodation is situated on the ground floor with good access. Are the facilities big enough, some ask? The answer is yes. We have to bear in mind this facility is for front of office service, as the rest of the office services will be based at Christchurch, as planned back in 2011. If a local resident wants to talk to someone, then appointments will be made for such meetings to be held at Wimborne or at the Civic Centre. This is exactly how things happen today. Everything is done by appointment. We will have 25 desk workstations, of which 10 of these will be used by the Stour Valley and Poole Partnership, and the rest are available to officers and employees and members needing a desk from which to work on a need-to basis. 5 separate meeting rooms, of which one is secure, as required by law, plus a meeting room large enough for the majority of council meetings. Larger council meetings will continue at Fursill until such time as we have a buyer for the premises. Then we will use the facilities of the Allendale Centre or one of the many options that we have available to choose from. I can understand the emotions of the local residents of Fursill, but we have to make our decisions based on the whole of the East Dorset area. The decision is, do we want to save the £380,000 over the next 5 years and gain a considerable capital amount from the sale of Fursill to be spent locally in the East Dorset area? There is a need for ongoing capital investment to ensure the quality of our service to our customers is not just maintained but improved through new technology. Our assets are always under review and at times require capital investment, again to maintain the highest level of what we consider to be a sensible cost. At the last Scrutiny and Policy Development meeting, Councillor Clark asked for an amendment to be added to item C, which reads, and that proceeds are placed in a fund earmarked for capital projects in East Dorset, which may include permanent council accommodation. As we look at the recommendations in front of you, A, B, C, D, E, they're as written. The only amendment will be to item C with the amendment from Councillor Clark. I propose acceptance of the recommendations A, B and C, as I say, with the amendment required by Councillor Clark plus D and E. Thank you, Chair.
I understand that this evening you're here to explore the options for the future of local government in Dorset. I cannot think of anything worse than surrendering localism and our district council offices. There are many people who work and base their lives around these places, including State Hill. Also, these are capital assets of the council, so what will happen to the staff and the capital from the sale of these vital assets? Also, a vitally important point is that decisions are made with help, often with close cooperation with town councils, Ferndown being one of these. This local knowledge is so important to make the correct decision and has proved to work efficiently, effectively and successfully over many years and must continue. So to move on to the options which you are considering this evening, firstly, full unitarisation across the whole county. Taking decisions away from a district level is parallel to handing over sovereignty to the EU. Decisions will be made by people the electorate haven't elected, who can't be removed and nobody knows who they are. This applies especially to option 1. Decisions will be made from where? There is no proposal, no new offices on the table, apart from maybe a rental in Wimborne. Why not? Anything could happen, and progress, I believe, is the poorer option. So moving on to the next one, which is to comprise Poole and Bournemouth and Christchurch. As a resident of Bournemouth, I can tell you that Bournemouth has run out of available land to build on. They are crying out for more spaces to build on, and they will be after the beautiful green spaces, triple SIs and conservation areas that we have in East Dorset, to fill Bournemouth's hedonistic housing demands. So that is a bad option. Moving on to the next one, which comprised all 6 district councils together. Can anybody ask me where will they be controlled from? All the extra work from one central office for 6 Dorset districts? I think it's madness. If we stay in the EU, resources will be stretched even further. You'll have a bigger demand for housing, more strain on the infrastructure, and chaos will follow. And if you haven't noticed how the infrastructure is like now, it will get worse. East Dorset District Council is laying off staff when there is a demand for more staff, and I believe this is a formula for disaster. Let me give you an example. I'm on the planning committee of Ferndown Town Council. We have a new website shared between Christchurch and East Dorset. There's missing information, applications. It's not good, to put it politely. So, if you can't get your act together on these minor points, what are we going to do on major points? The last couple of points is local MP Chris Chope is not supporting the unitaries. And the last one, finally, is the Localism Act. Are representatives being given the right to choose their system of governance? Should councillors be choosing a system of governance, or should we have a referendum by the local people, which I believe would be the correct way for people to decide how our district councils or Dorset is run? That's what I have to say.
Well, good evening, Chairman and members of the Council. When the Firs Hill Residents Association was set up, one of the initial objectives of the association was to understand the proposed development of the Woodley site, so that the impact on Firs Hill would be minimised and that the positive conditions included in the development brief could be adhered to by any potential developer. However, having attended a number of council, cabinet and scrutiny meetings, our attention is drawn away from the finer detail of the development to the unprofessional and illogical strategy that has evolved and has led to the desire to urgently sell the site and rent offices elsewhere. I will now explain why we believe that the proposal before you should be rejected. Most councillors who have seen the Allen View House office think they are poor, and even when over £300,000 has been spent on making it fit for purpose, they will still be a compromise. We know the costs have already gone up, and that is before any work has started, and all for just 25 staff. What happens if, following the Dorset Local Authority reorganisation, East Dorset District Council needs more accommodation? or no accommodation at all. What a total waste of money that is going to end up being. It will make the £100,000 loss on the Allendale House project pale into insignificance. And by the way, that £100,000 is a sunk cost and part of a total cost of any move from Firs Hill, which seems to have been conveniently ignored by the accommodation report. The latest version of the accommodation report, which was meant to explain the full cost implication of the move, continues to be very biased towards the move away from Firs Hill and focusing on detail on the costs of keeping the offices running, with little accurate detail on the Wimborne costs. Appendix 6 says the operating from the offices in Wimborne will be more cost effective and provide better access to residents. How can the set-up costs of £300,000 be better than remaining at Firs Hill, at least until you know the direction of which East Dorset will be going? As for the offices being located in Firs Hill for over 40 years, why are they suddenly becoming inaccessible to the public? Appendix 6 suggests that Wimborne officers will retain greater flexibility to adjust to future change. It is exactly the opposite, which we have been saying for months, and as we ask, who would sell their biggest asset, their security, their home, at this time, a period in time when so much uncertainty on the future? In fact, items 10 and 11 on tonight's agenda only emphasise that uncertainty. So, councillors, you need to ask yourselves, why is the Allen View House deal being such an illogical and poor piece of business? Why is it being pushed so hard by certain councillors? Dorset County Council met on the 10th of March to discuss the many options for local government in Dorset. One of the two options recommended for further review would see East Dorset and Christchurch District Councils going their separate ways. East Dorset would have to disentangle itself from Christchurch, which will cost money and time. We also know that Christchurch District Council is interested in joining up with Bournemouth and Poole to create one unitary. We, the residents of East Dorset, and hopefully the East Dorset District Council, do not want to become part of such a unitary. Furthermore, numerous councillors have made it clear they feel the bridesmaids in the East Dorset Christchurch Combined Council. If East Dorset got dragged into a large urban unitary, it would be a disaster for this council and its residents. We understand the need to save money with the planned government cuts to council budgets. Once again, the accommodation report is biased in the costs it is representing. In Appendix 5, there are capital costs of £96,000. Why would you need any of these costs when you have a building that is being held until you know the future? Then there's the revenue budget of nearly £365,000. That was for the 2015-16 year. But for 2016-17 year, the repairs, the maintenance, the gas, the electricity, rates, cleaning and property services are too high for a mothballed building. I estimate at least a saving of £100,000 on those budget figures. That gives you a total reduction of £200,000. And whilst you remain at Firs Hill, the value of this site is going to continue to increase. So just as the costs of Allen View House are increasing, the cost to remain and stay at Firs Hill until the road ahead is clear can be significantly reduced. We are not against the sale of Firs Hill, but not now. The proposed move to Allen View House, Wimborne, an immediate sale of Firs Hill is irrational.
That's 5 minutes 30, wrap it up.
And it would be totally irresponsible for East Dorset councillors to vote on this recommendation. Finally, if the vote is to move, we will hold East Dorset District Council to account and will raise the matter with the District Auditor at the Council's audit of accounts. Now, I do actually have one other thing I would like to say. It's only going to take 45 seconds.
Be very quick.
But it is very important this council hears it. What is the role of the Scrutiny and Policy Development Committee? Whilst we understand it can only make recommendations, it is meant to ensure integrity and the conscience of the council. 3 times that committee has voted against the recommendation to move to Allen View House. We think that with those three objections, the proposal should be dead. Why is the Cabinet ignoring the recommendations and driving forward its own agenda and disregarding the processes the Council has in place to ensure proper scrutiny and accountability? We find this unacceptable. Our observations from the public gallery of the councillors during meetings and the behind-the-scenes changes have definitely given us concern. Serious, rational decision-making needs to be above political and personal ambition. We regard the matter so seriously that we are considering a petition for additional review to safeguard the interests of the community of East Dorset, whom you represent and serve.
Okay, Mr. Hine, I've been very lenient, and that's 7 minutes. The figures you've been given by Ray, I think, tell a very important story. But I think with members here, it's a difficult decision to make because this is a real heart and head decision. I know in my own heart I will be very, very sad if we are no longer using Firs Hill. I've had a long association with this building, not necessarily as a councillor, but in my time in and around Wimborne. So my heart says, no, let's not do it. But, you know, my head, and again, the figures that Ray's given us, show me that I think we have no option now but to go down that route. And I'm glad we've got the amendment in little c about ring-fencing the funds to be spent within the East Dorset area, so that nobody else gets their hands on it. Thank you.
Now, once this building has gone, it will be gone. There is no coming back to it. It's like selling the family silver. You can only sell the silver once. Now, there's been talk about other councils selling off their offices. That's not a good market, in my view, to sell another council office. This council, since I came here, has been regarded not just for its, status and the work it's done, but for the fact that we have a purpose-built council building. Yes, it isn't always the most convenient place to get to, and in my past I have lobbied, campaigned for transport to come up here, and we did have transport once. We used to have a little minibus that came up once a week so that people could come and pay their council tax or whatever. It used to go down to Wimborne Square and pick people up, but that, in this Conservative administration, was scrapped, much to my sadness and the residents who used it regularly. So there was a way of getting up here if one didn't have a car, but that has now gone. So I really think you need to take in account of the fact that once you make this decision tonight, there is no turning back. This building will be sold, and I quite think it will be sold for something that doesn't represent its true value, its true worth, the fact that it was a purpose-built building. I remember coming up here to look at this building before I ever became a councillor and thinking, crikey, that is a wonderfully looking building. And when I first came in here, this council chamber, I've been to several other councils to view, was the best one I had ever seen. And yet I know I'm speaking with my heart here, and people go, oh, she's getting very emotional. But, be emotional about things you care about. Most of the time it's people, all the time it's my residents, all the time it's my family. But I also think this is worth being emotional about, because you will never, ever get this building or its like again, or its situation. And once you have decided to sell it, it will be gone forever. And I think you need to think, will East Dorset be gone forever? Because there are, land bank people afoot in the conurbation who think that East Dorset's got some rather lovely fields, green fields, green belt, but they're all desperate for places to build.
Mention has been made in reports to Council of the political impartiality of the Scrutiny Committee. Councillor Flower tonight has said about the importance of scrutiny. Can I take this opportunity to remind members that the Scrutiny Committee has rejected selling Firs Hill and relocating to Allenview House not once but 3 times? What's the point of having a Scrutiny Committee if Cabinet just dismisses the findings on not 1 but 3 occasions? So I ask colleagues to once again reject this motion until we have a clear plan for the future. I have to be true to my principles and have integrity, so I'm going to vote against the motion.
If we can remember back in our history, those of us that were here then, back in 2013 we made a decision what to do, and the choice was Firs Hill, Christchurch, or go to a wholly new building somewhere in Hearn, which was halfway between Christchurch and here. We actually made the decision to make Christchurch the main base. This was mainly due on resale values. And even in the core strategy, we've actually moved the village envelope to include this inside the village. So therefore, when we brought the core strategy out, getting out of here was part of our strategy. This building, although this little bit here is quite nice, there's bits down the other end that are in not very good condition at all. It's a very, very expensive building to upkeep, and we really can't afford to stay here, and we don't actually need it. The government has said that any boundaries that are checked, any groupings of unitaries that will be made, will all be made at the same time. So whatever organisation we end up in, we will not be alone needing this place open again. So we don't need that at all. We will, however, whatever situation we end up in, need local revs and bends, because the Stour Valley Partnership has got to work, as do local housing needs, and so meetings will be needed. We are providing this with Allen View House at the moment, and possibly other options later on. So I think we've got a building here, we can't afford it, we don't need it now, I don't think we will ever need it, and so the only sensible thing to do is to move down to Wimborne and sell this place.
The other point is, and the thing that really worries me, is the facilities at Allen View House. Now, I've got no problem with this council moving into the centre of Wimborne in this case, or another centre, depending on where we can go. I think it's a brilliant idea, but it's not big enough, frankly. It's not sufficient, it's not going to do the job. And assuming, possibly, that the subsequent authority decides to put something on the Allendale Centre site, but as again, I think we'll find that that won't be there to build on anyway. It will go to any some sort of private company.
Obviously, the points Councillor Russell has raised is the cost at the end of the lease, and he's quite right, there will be a cost at the end of the lease, but as yet, I don't think we're in a position to know what that would be, because who knows what the cost will be in 5 years' time. You can comment. I'd also like to query, if I may, a couple of other points that he raised on the furniture. The furniture will be a reusable item that will go wherever we move to, if we move from the Allen View House. So that actually, whilst it being a cost up front, is actually a cost that will be used elsewhere. If I can, I will try and seek some numbers for him on the cost of refurbishment at the end of the lease, but I don't have them to hand today.
There's been a lot of talk around what this money could be used for, or what savings it could generate, and it's just a quick reminder that there are two types of money or public funds that run through a council. There's capital and there are revenue receipts. If I take them both in turn, the capital one's an interesting one. I've long been of the view that this building is not fit for purpose for us as a council. It is too big, clearly, and it's in the wrong place. So therefore, selling it for a capital receipt to be reinvested as we see fit, whether it be another project or on a replacement council building, strikes me as very much common sense. And that is of our choosing. It is our money to spend how we see fit. As David Packer touched on, the decision to move down to the centre of Wimborne is not a permanent one, should we wish it not to be so. But there's also the point that hasn't been touched on quite so much by the speakers, which is the revenue cost that this building has to us as a council. There is a significant saving to be made every month, every year, that will help us deal with the pressures on services that we wish to provide. And this is a point that shouldn't be lost. I have a lot of sympathy for the comments that Janet made, and I appreciate your passion for this building and its place in the community here. But we as a council exist for one purpose, and that is to provide services to our residents. And I suspect when you come to assess selling off the family silver, if you ask residents what they want their money to be spent on, I suspect where and how huge the council chamber is quite low down in comparison to a lot of the things that we can put our money to. We will always have, and always should have, a proper and functional civic building in East Dorset, but it should not come at the expense of the services that we provide. That is what we're elected for, it is what we should always be elected for, and I will never stand up in this council chamber and say that we should stay here for old time's sake or for any other reason when we have the challenges coming that we do in public services. That must always be our priority.
If you go round the offices at the moment, it's a bit like a morgue really, because a vast part of this building is not used. This council cannot sustain this type of cost and this type of building in the modern environment. So the decision, although difficult, becomes easier when you look at the business case. And I'm sad to say that we will have to say goodbye to Furze Hill, and I will be supporting the recommendation, but it's based on the business case for this project. And I'd be sad to leave it, but it's the right thing to do.
My summing up is that we're like an elderly couple on a reduced income, rattling round in a large building that we can't afford to maintain. We don't want to leave it, it's full of memories, but in reality we know we're going to have to move to something more fit for purpose. And I think with the fact that we're going to have a capital gain here that can be used and is going to be earmarked and safeguarded for use in East Dorset is the right option. So I'm fully supportive of the recommendation.
We're progressing now with that accommodation project, and we've talked about this over and over again, and I have arguably been the most vocal proponent on this subject. I agreed with what was put into the original officer's report. I thought it was a thorough report. I thought it was excellent in what it said, and I cannot justify the costs on this building and what it costs each month to try and maintain this building, despite us putting a large proportion of it into mothball, and I can't justify that for the residents in which I serve. And so I will be voting for the recommendations tonight, as I always have done. I wasn't at the scrutiny meeting on the 5th because it was my annual town meeting, and that scrutiny meeting was one that was brought about at short notice, so I wasn't able to change my diary with the council, with Wimborne Town Council that I am chairman of, and I had no option to be at that annual town meeting because I had my public coming in to question me. And so if I'd been there, it would have been 5-5 in the decision, not the 5-4. And the one thing I would say is that on 10.3 on conclusions, I do have a concern about when it says a high quality customer facing services need to continue to be streamlined using an efficient secure ICT platform that supports our customer needs and our wider partnership work and activity. And I do expect that if this does go through, the recommendations, that I have an assurance from this council that there will be one-on-one officer to residents, face-to-face consultations, that they're not going to be going into an accommodation building and expect me to pick up a phone to speak to an officer at Christchurch, because I will not stand for that. But I will be voting for the recommendations tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Several members have said that it's sad. We actually, I think, have the best council chamber working arrangement in all of the local authorities in Dorset. So there we are. So what will be, will be.
But my memory goes back to the early 60s, when in actual fact what is now Allendale House was in actual fact the civic centre. And my wife, bless her, because we had rates in those days, not council taxes, she used to trudge up to Mr. Brown, who was in charge of the rate office, and she paid her rates monthly. So in a way, one observation is by leaving Furze Hill, we are in actual fact going back home. Now, one thing I get from the residents in Wimborne, of course, and it's already been touched upon, is the fact that Furze Hill is not accessible. and I'm sure at the time when Firs Hill was suggested, there was a lot of disquiet within the town about the fact that it was moving out of Wimborne and actually coming up here. Allen View House is on a main road. It's got disabled access, and you can get to it by, well, most people can get to it by bus. So it is there, it's accessible for the residents, and I think that's another good reason why we should be moving from here. And I have every sympathy with what has been said, but I think we have to look at the reality of the situation. And ironically, I think, and I might be wrong here, but some of the money that was left over from the old Wimborne District Council was in actual fact used to build the Allendale Community Centre, which was opened in 1975. So money there was well spent.
Councillor Cook talked about people being emotive. I took great offence at that actually, because I studied for 5 years to be a management accountant. I'm really interested in cost benefit, I'm really interested in investment appraisal. And I have not heard one single sensible reason why we should be moving at this moment from this building, from the cabinet. Not one sensible reason. I'm not emotive. I'm a management accountant. 5 years I've studied. At the moment, finance is driving policy. It's empty, it's tired, it's one of surrender to our faith, and I won't be surrendering. I've got no great problem with selling Firs Hill. Doesn't really mean anything to me, if I'm honest. It's a building. What are important to the people and our residents? I've got a massive problem with selling it when the market, in council's own words, is saturated. And so therefore the price is likely to be depressed. We are unlikely to get value for money. We already know we're unlikely to get value for money because the council has already told us that the market is saturated. That was in the members' briefing. Do you remember that's what Gordon Brown did with our gold? If you vote for it, you are responsible. And so I'm glad we're having a recorded vote. I have a problem with the emphasis being on that we can only use our reserve once, and so that causes us a problem and we need to sell this. Can we sell our principal asset more than once? Because I haven't heard that said. I've got a serious problem as a management accountant, not as someone emotive. Using a short-term sticking plaster approach, remember, go back to last October when we wasted 100k. We've known for years our direction of travel, and yet this is as good as it gets. The public will judge us. I'm a Democrat. I've got a serious problem, given the wise words earlier on talking about the importance of scrutiny, several times in the right place. Scrutiny rejected this scheme 3 times. The council is in a very dangerous place. I ask again that a long-term, and I said this before, a long-term strategic plan be worked up before we sell off our gold too cheaply. If we agree to this resolution, I think we'll have operational issues operating at Allen View. Councillor Morgan talked about accessibility. Have you ever seen how much it is to get on the bus from Ferndown to Wimborne? The people we should be serving most are the most vulnerable, and we are not with this solution. I don't believe we'll get value for money from the disposal. I believe we turn any possible unitary into a self-fulfilling prophecy. I won't be part of that. I reject this solution. Now, I go back to the proposer to wind up this debate.
Councillor Dover is right. This building is superb. But how much longer can we afford a building that is superb? I don't run a Rolls Royce. We don't need a Rolls Royce. We need to have something that is suitable for the residents that we represent, not what is suitable for us. I don't care where we hold our meetings. I really don't. It's important that we give the best possible deal for the residents that we represent. This piece of land is in a very good place, and it will receive a good premium price. We've heard about some of the other buildings that are up for sale, but they're not in this location. This location will be much sought after by developers, but it will still be down to us to make sure we get the price that we want. The chairman raised the subject of the 100,000 that was spent on the prior design, or the previous design. Yes, we did. And yes, I feel we were let down by some of the people that we were looking to go into partnership with. But you can't continually go into the past. We've got to go into the future. The good news, I suppose, is out of the 100,000, that was shared with Christchurch, so the cost to this council was actually 50,000. Christchurch took the rest. That's what joint partnerships are about. Chair, I move the recommendations as laid down, A, B, C. Again, can I just point out that there is Amendment C, which was put together by Councillor Clark. So I move recommendations A, B, C with amendment D and E.
Members, we move into a recorded vote.
You could indicate clearly if you're for, against or wish to abstain to the recommendations in front of you, starting with Councillor Bartlett.
For.
Councillor Bryan.
For.
Councillor Bones is absent. Councillor Burt.
Abstain.
Councillor Buckler. For. Councillor Clark is absent. Councillor Cook.
For.
Councillor Coombs.
For.
Councillor Mrs Dover.
Against.
Councillor Dyer.
For.
Councillor Flower.
For.
Councillor Gibson.
For.
Councillor Gorringe.
For.
Councillor Harrison.
For.
Councillor Johnson.
For.
Councillor Mrs Logan.
For.
Councillor Mrs Lugg.
Against.
Councillor Lugg.
Against.
Councillor Mrs Manuel.
For.
Councillor Morgan.
For.
Councillor Mortimer.
For.
Councillor Oglesby.
Against.
Councillor Packer.
For.
Councillor Mrs Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Russell.
Abstain.
Councillor Shortell.
Against.
Councillor Skeets.
For.
Councillor Tong.
For.
Councillor Wilson.
For.
Chairman, that's 19 for, 6 against with 2 abstentions.